People think that they're invulnerable. They want to act like they're invulnerable. They want to put on a show that they're invulnerable with one of their masks. I think that's one of the, if I had to think, that's probably what most people do because they're afraid of being vulnerable. Yeah. And being vulnerable sometimes means having to ask for help.
My name is Ashanti, and welcome to the Taking Off the Mask podcast, where men get real. As you can see, I'm on location. I'm here in a library. We've never filmed in a library before. The only time we've been in a library is in New York. I was in front of the New York library. But this is raining outside, so I couldn't record outside today. But I got permission to come inside here, and what a beautiful space. Today, sharing his mask is Kevin Cho. Kevin is a major in the U.S. Air Force. He's also a critical care nurse practitioner serving in South Florida. Kevin and I met at the U.S. Surgeon General Award ceremony in Washington, D.C. He was one of the other recipients of the Surgeon General's medallion. And man, what a beautiful heart, beautiful brother, beautiful man, talking about his own mask, the work that he does in the medical industry to work to save lives, the things he's probably seen, but the ability for him to keep going back every day to do more work to save lives. So thankful for his service. He is, you'll see that in his recording, he's in front of a mini library. So I thought that it would be good to see if I could find out a way to connect, since the back of my desk doesn't have my books behind it, but I'm now here in a library, the San Leandro Library. You maybe hear me whispering a little bit. I'm doing my best to not talk really loud, but I am really thankful for this space and for these books. I don't know how much you know, I really love books. I probably have more than should fit in the space that I have available, but I love it. And there's lots happening here in the library. So thank you for being a part of the Taking Off the Mask podcast with us. This conversation with Kevin is a beautiful one. Not only did we get to meet in DC, which was the first time we met face to face, but I've been able to follow his work online and just see his heart for people, his heart for the medical industry and how we can do better about taking care of each other. So important. Thank you for being a part of this journey with us. I hope you really enjoy this conversation with Kevin. Hearing a person who has seen life and death. It's hard to talk about death. But in the season of our work with Ever Forward and my work with the learning experiences, we were talking about who are you missing? And I know that today, as I'm continually doing that work, as we talk about these masks today, I'm excited for you to really learn more about people around our work. I hope you know somebody who can benefit from this conversation. Share it with them. Maybe you know somebody who's trying to figure out their career journey or figure out their path, and maybe the conversation with Kevin will inspire them. Thank you for being a part of the journey with us. We'll see you soon. Please enjoy today's episode with Kevin Cho. Bye now. Kevin Cho, welcome to the Taking Off the Mask podcast. It's so glad to have you.
Thanks so much. It's great to be here.
I've already made an intro to you, but I'm so thankful for you. What I should have done, I should have been prepared. I brought the gift you sent me because I'll never forget it. But how about this? Before we jump into this show, will you just tell folks who you are, what you want them to know about you, and then we'll jump in after that.
Sure. My name is Kevin. I was born in Korea, lived in the States most of my life, adopted by my parents. When I was a baby, I came and lived across Michigan, and then Florida became my home, and I've been there ever since. I work in the public hospitals as a nurse practitioner in the ICUs, down in Miami most of the time when I'm a civilian, but right now I'm on my military side of things, wearing my military hat as a medical officer in the U.S. Air Force.
Awesome. When you think about officers, I actually, when I was in college, I was actually envisioning that I was going to join the officers program at the university I went to. And I don't know, I'm in engineering, so I was looking at the Corps of Engineers, and I was looking at all the ways that I could use engineering. And then I ended up going to the civilian world. But thank you for the work you're doing, man. I appreciate you.
I think we connected partly because of what we did during the pandemic. I would say that it really is just as needed as teachers, as parents, as mentors. Like, I think that all of the service everyone does is so necessary in a world that everything is connected and everyone is connected. So happy to be part of it.
Yeah. I was thinking about like this conversation and the fact that, you and I were recipients of the Surgeon General Medallion. That's when we had a first face to face. And I was just so learning about you and reading about you. Before that award I was so just excited, happy. And then it gets to meet you in person and feel that energy that comes through the screen so beautifully. But this is about these masks, I mean, I would love to talk more about that, but I definitely was thankful for being able to meet you face to face there. As a guest, you get to decide who goes first. As a guest, do you want me to go first, or do you want to go first? And what we'll do first is we'll share the front of the mask, and then say whatever you want to say about it, and then we'll share the back, and then the conversation will go where it's supposed to go. It's not an interview, so whatever you have a question for me, I have a question for you. Maybe there's something comes up that you want to dig into, and we can do that. But it's an opportunity for us to just get to know each other better,
Well, I think it's your house, so why don't you go first, and I'll take your lead.
Okay. Well, when we invite guests here, they're family. So this is your house too, brother. So looking at our different backgrounds, we can tell we're in different houses in the moment. So we'll take there. All right. So here we go. Here's what my drawing is today. And then here are the words: happy, caring, hardworking. And I think I don't know if I've ever written happy on the front. I think I've usually write funny on the front. When I wrote it, I was actually going to erase it. I'm like, what are you doing? Like, that's not a word you write on the front. And I think maybe this is all part of the journey, right? I mean, like when I drew the picture, I drew them in like this light blue. Can you see the tears? Like,
Yeah, I'm just realizing I didn't draw a mask. I just only read happy instructions.
Oh, okay. No worries. A drawing will come to you in the future, and you'll share it with us. Yeah. And so I think the reason I wrote happy, maybe subconsciously, is that I'm doing my best to show happiness right now, because I think when we get to the back, there's a lot of deep other stuff going on. And so I think what I'm trying to show is I'm trying to like, hey, how you doing? I'm really trying to push it out, because normally I'm hardworking. Hardworking is definitely one of my more common words, but it is a true thing that I do let people see. I think I'm caring, and maybe it's just a season right now that's just it's very when you asked me before the show, like how are you? You said, how are you? And I'm like, well, maybe this is a good time. Good thing we're about to have this real talk, because I can like say I'm good to make sure all the recording stuff is right, and then I can also be honest and say, actually, yeah, it's there's some more going on than you can see, Yeah.
Not so good.
Yeah, yeah. It's almost sometimes I think I have a hard time even saying when it's not so good, just because I'm so used to taking care of others. And so even addressing it sometimes is not even finding the right words for it, without feeling like I'm being a burden, or feeling like I'm bothering people, which is exactly what people say in the workshop. So why don't they tell people they don't want to be a burden? They don't want to bother people. And when they say it, I'm like, yep. Yep. And all this, all they're saying in that work is like, yeah. And so I know that in this, this work of this movement, the Million Mask movement, but also this podcast is me doing my own work as well, and inviting other people to just name what they're going through, So that's the front, brother.
I think there's something so powerful in the community of invulnerability. Like, people think that they're invulnerable. They want to act like they're invulnerable. They want to put on a show that they're invulnerable with one of their masks. I think that's if I had to think, that's probably what most people do, because they're afraid of being vulnerable. Yeah. And being vulnerable sometimes means having to ask for help. And I think that is, and I especially, I think for folks who are expected to be there for other people in some way, in any way that is meaningful, asking for help is incredibly distressing, difficult. And I think that you're not alone in that. I mean, I would say that a version of that same feeling is on my mask, what I show people and what I don't. I think it's very, if anything, I hope that it brings people together, realizing that vulnerability is real and is everywhere. Asking for help is necessary.
Oof. It is. I think it's necessary and is also hard, right? It is necessary and I think it's also important. I mean, it's necessary and it requires you to be a person who can trust that I'm going to put it out there and hopefully the person will receive it in the best way and won't run away like, I don't want to talk. I can't. Like the fear that we may have is like you tell somebody and they're like, they give us a look or they like whatever messages that we have told people that didn't get received like we wanted them to get received. I'm saying I. Sometimes I'm wondering if I'm gonna project if I actually project on this person that they are gonna do the worst thing that someone ever did, right? So they're gonna run away, they're gonna go tell somebody, they're gonna laugh, they're gonna like make me wrong for the feeling I'm having. And I think I oftentimes hear those messages as I want to connect and want to get deeper, but it's often easier just to say, I'll just say, I'm good. Oh, I'm good. Good. How are you? So that has to happen in a split second because somebody asks you, you don't have time to ponder all that like in a long philosophical thought, right? They'd be like, hey, did you hear me? Did you hear my question? You know, you got to process it quick, like boom, 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 like in a moment, you know?
I mean, it takes sincerity. It takes emotional capital, which we don't always have even to admit to ourselves. And it takes trust. Three things that don't always come in everyday conversation, or private or public.
Thank you. All right. Well, now your turn. You get to go to the front.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Front. Okay, the front.
Just the front.
Since I didn't follow instructions, I didn't draw a mask. Somebody didn't see one, but I did write three qualities. So
okay.
These are three things that I like. I think I like people to see.
Okay.
I try to be bold in the fact like I'm able to think forward, think ahead. That I'm always understanding of people's differences or their difficulties or their troubles, and that I'm confident in what I know, what I don't know. Yeah. And those are probably the three things in medicine, in the military, in the classroom that I try to project. Whether or not I'm successful or not is probably debatable.
Thank you. Bold, understanding, and confident. Maybe when we get to the back, some of this will come up, but something.
Well.
Okay. All right. So let's go to the back, and then let's let all the cure. Because thank you. You ready for the back? It's my turn.
Oh,
I'll go first.
Sure.
Okay. Yeah, sure. Well, thank you for sharing that. The reason I was thinking about the bold and confident, right? Like those are these really beautiful. I mean, I think they're beautiful qualities, and sometimes I think in our world, when you're bold and when you're confident, it gets misdefined by others in the world. You know, I've seen that happen, and so sometimes I think, So that's where my thoughts were coming. But and maybe if I were more bold, I would talk more about how I really feel. I think that's actually an area that I'm actually wanting to. I want to be able to use that on the front of my mask. I don't think I've ever written the word bold on the front of my mask, and I connect with that word. I think when I'm talking to friends, I'll say I'm kind of bold, kind of. I put a qualifier in front of it, but maybe this is.
I say bold because I'm sincerely interested in people's life stories, where they've come from, their experiences. There's a medic here that, long story short, because I don't want to take up a whole hour, but long story short, she was in a war zone 10 years ago, was in a place where they were attacked, ran for her life, and turned around to see medics running towards the smoke, dropping everything they had, not even their gear to keep them safe, just their stuff to help save lives. And they went and ran into the smoke to go save lives, and they did. And she wasn't a medic at the time, but she was determined after seeing that chaos, that fear. It gave her hope and it gave her inspiration. And now, 10 years later, she's a medic here in another place, another time. And learning those stories is incredibly personal. I think it's incredibly inspiring, but it's also kind of bold just to ask someone you just barely met. I probably learned this about her the second day we met. But as you'll see on the back, it's often because I'm trying to cover something else up. Even though I'm sincerely interested, it's easier to learn about them than to talk about me.
Oh
If that makes
man,
sense.
oh, it makes a lot of sense. It makes a lot of sense. Maybe this was where it's coming in right now, so I'm gonna take to the back of mine.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay, I'm having to in this season I'm having to like be really mindful because I'm carrying all this heaviness. So I'm gonna just go. This is that part of vulnerability you're talking about. So I probably wrote it messy so that I don't even want to read it, but heavy sadness, worry, and fear. And I already feel it coming up. So a lot of sadness happening in my world today in this season. Um my grandmother passed 2020 January, and I kind of just, I mean, it was the middle of a busy season, but it's also right before the pandemic, right? So I was just dealing with a lot of suspended sadness because I was like, I'm the youngest grandson, but also some of my cousins were acting foolish and being really greedy and hands stuck out, and a lot of ugly stuff was happening. And I was like, I always saw this in the movies. I was always saw it in the movies. And I almost was like, nah, this wouldn't happen to us, right? I never could have even imagined, never didn't even plan, didn't even think about what would happen when my grandmother was gone. But I definitely didn't expect to see what I saw happening. And I just was like really upset, but trying to like also be trying to be take care of the business that needs to be taken care of, but also dealing with the chaos of family grief and family ugliness, you know. And I think that I suspended it. I just, I missed her, but I didn't fully grieve, you know? Like I think just my cousins planned a ceremony for her and they didn't even check with my schedule. I was out of town. Like I'm like, how do you plan a ceremony for our grandmother and you don't even make sure that my schedule fits? And they're like, well, you can create your own ceremony if you want. And I'm like, what did you say? Like I'm trying to like be rational but also be a human and like and I just want because I wanted to just go into like FU mode like but I know that wasn't going to make it better and it wasn't going to solve the problem, but I was in that mode, but I was just grieving and dealing with this deeper sadness that my family was doing that. So that's what's happening. And then just 2 days ago, today is Wednesday now, so 3 days ago, my cousin passed here in the Bay Area. And it's just been like it was heavy. It came out of nowhere. Sunday got a call from my aunt and she was like, he's gone. And I'm like, huh? And
Were you close with them? You were close.
yeah. We were both in education. Like we talked. I mean, last time I talked to him was right before New Year's when we had a chance to hang out. We didn't hang out a whole lot, but his office used to be right here where my office was, so I would see him almost every day. And then he moved to a new office, so I didn't see him as often. But yeah, just like I think close relatively to somebody who you can have a real talk with and really take off the mask. And every time we had a talk, it was mask off immediately. It was not a whole lot of how's the weather, how's the blah blah blah. It was like, how's it going? What's up? And we were just like we knew we can hold that space for each other. So yeah, it was feeling that toughness right now. And then worry and fear are the other two. But I think right now the grief. And I think I was just in the process of beginning to like say, okay, I need to process this grandmother grief from 3 years ago. Well, almost 2020. And as I start processing that, this happened. So it's like boom, boom, whap, pap, you know? And then yesterday, a young man who was in Ever Forward, he started when he was like 14, 15 years old. He's now like 30. His dad passed just yesterday. And I'm like holding space, right? You're just in this mode of like, and that's, I think that's the caring part, right? The caring part is like, absolutely. This is what I enjoyed. Not only I enjoy doing it, this is what I've known him more than half his life, right? I mean, he's a part of my life. And I think holding space for him to go through this grief also, and knowing that no one made room for me to do it. So I'm really conscious to make room for people to do that in a healthy way. So anyway, those are things that are just heavy right now. So I'll stop there. But yeah, thanks for letting me share.
I think four things. Number one, if I can say anything about loss, about the end of life or the end of the end of an era. I think that people don't only mourn the loss of the person they love, they also mourn the loss of the fantasy that they had for themselves, their family, their loved ones. I recently lost my uncle. The family has been kind of strained over the last few years. And I think that speaking to my mom about her sister, her brother-in-law, my uncle, their family, I always had this fantasy upon which I built so many great memories as a kid, even though there were a lot of masks that they wore, not in front of me sometimes, but in front of the world. And I think part of the thing that you're missing, not only your grandmother and not only your cousin, but also the mourning the loss of the fantasy upon which you created your life experience. It's not a bad thing. I think it's a very natural thing. We expect and hope and want the best for those we love, those we care about. And I think when they disappoint us, like perhaps sounds like your family kind of did after the loss of your grandmother, that we also mourn that sense of comfort and home that we've built throughout a lifetime, I think. For some reason, all my social media has been sending me this stuff in Spanish. I guess as my Spanish has gotten better over the last 10 years, and my Instagram has become bilingual. But there was this commentator talking about friends, two types of friends. Friends that are like bonsai trees and friends that are like cactuses.
Mm.
You can water the cactus once a year, come back to it. It's still a cactus, still happy to see you, still growing, still blooming. And then the bonsai tree, that if you don't take perfect care of it, it will not be the same when you come back. And there are friends like that when you have to nurture constantly, talking and making sure they're okay, you're okay. And then there's the cactus, the friends who are always there, no matter where and no matter when. And like I think losing some of my cousins, especially some of them sound like more like one of those sibling cousins that you grew up with and spend your life with. I think it's uniquely difficult. And I think and loss, I think, is something so personal yet universal that I hope that people remember that it happens to anyone lucky enough to love or to care. And those memories though that we've built help us to, and our regrets, not just the memories, help us to provide a comfort that we wish we had, the mourning time that we wish we had for those that we are fearful or experiencing what we felt like not the kid, I guess he's almost my age, the Ever Forward Club member that lost their father.
Yeah.
And I like to think that loss of any kind informs our ability to connect and to help others in a way that we wish and hope that everyone has access to. And so I think it's a dark but beautiful thing that you can do by providing that.
Yeah. Thank you, man. I think that type of loss is one that especially stands out to me a lot because my father died before I was born. So I was mourning his loss in my mom's womb, didn't know about it, right? But I knew that when I showed up here on the planet, I was a little boy who was super emotional, right? Feeling every feeling, like feeling other people's feelings, like feeling for them, like, wow, people feel sad. I feel it with them, empathy, right? And in a society that says, no, hey, boys don't cry, suck it up. What's wrong with you? Don't go help. Hey, stop helping everybody up when they fall. Why are you always so like what? I was a nurturer. Like I was raising my siblings, so I was already at home raising kids before I even know how to make a kid, you know? And I think that ability to be like, it was just in me, and it was those feelings were heavy. So when I started meeting young people in my life who also didn't have fathers, I felt that, right? Even though they always act really tough about it, right? Yeah. So yeah, it's a season, and I think this is just a opportunity. And I think that even me trying to create content about it, I want to make content, but I'm like, I don't want to sound like I'm complaining. I don't want to sound like this is the message I tell you behind where I'm like, I don't want to be like all the things I say to myself, but I think that's part of the journey too. So, yeah, man, thank you for listening. That's the back, and now it's your turn when you're ready.
Yes, the back is kind of like the opposite of the front. Like rather than being bold, I'm often quite fearful of the decisions I make out of fear that I'll hurt someone, or that it was the wrong decision, or that it won't help the way I hope. I always try to be understanding. I'm not always successful, but sometimes I'm deeply disappointed in what I see in the world, myself, and other people, but often just in myself. And then, even though I try to be confident, which I think is expected in medicine, as we talk about life and death and life changing circumstances, uncertainty is something that always haunts me. And I think that being bold, understanding, and confident with the backdrop of being fearful, often disappointed, and uncertain is, I think, a dichotomy that's part of my daily life most of the time.
Thank you for that. Because I guess that helps me ask the question even better now. When you wrote the bold and confident, have you ever operated in that way? Because it's what you're showing, and found that people confuse it for arrogance, or they called it something else that it wasn't. But they, like, I think because I'm sometimes afraid to show those things. I'm like, man, I wish I could be more bold. Like I've made so many videos in that phone that I've just stuffed and sat on and just be like, no one cares about that. And that's some boldness that I'm working towards. I mean, it's like, man, you're an old dude, Ashanti. What's taking you so long to get more bold, right? And I think in some things I'm really bold, like, and in some things I'm more like, nah, it doesn't need to be. I don't need to share that. I don't need to post that. There's a song have you heard of Dax? Have you ever heard that a rapper named Dax? So he has a song called Eternity, which has been ringing a lot of bells lately. And the last line of it says, are you giving more, or are you taking, in the world? And then he says, if it were to all end tomorrow, what are you holding on to that the world needs to see? And it's just like and I keep hearing it replaying. I've only heard the song like a week ago, for the first time, 2 weeks ago maybe. And it's like, what are you holding on to that the world needs to see? And life is so, like, we don't know when's life is gonna be in. My cousin was a young guy doing his PhD, right? He's like full of life, and so I think, like, okay, who knows when my last day will be? So am I just gonna find all these journals after I'm gone and be like, oh my goodness, he could have written so much, he could have said so many things, and I just let fear get in the way. So my goal really is that. So I was asking you a question and I just started talking. I'm sorry. I was really asking you.
No. I think I think that that fear of reckoning with your mortality, I think, is, like, honestly, out here, the very first. I'm trying to say what I can say safely. Yeah. Within the first 2 days that we arrived to this part of the world, there was an emergency in which we had to take cover, and it was unexpected. It hadn't happened in this location probably for years. Not to mention, we arrived in the advent of the war in Gaza, and just like 10 days ago, 3 American service members were killed in Jordan, which reminded me how uncertain life can be. But not only that, and this is reported publicly, so I feel comfortable saying it. I mean, 30, 40 more people were injured in the attack, and this is a small place where everyone knew everybody, where so many people were impacted that it changed fundamentally how people could interact. And I think it made me wonder about all these things, but it also made me realize that as much as we hold military service on this pedestal, this is every day for so many people in the States that don't live in neighborhoods upon which we would all call safe. This is every day for folks who are stuck in classrooms or stuck in food deserts that have been subjugated by systems that make it so difficult for them to reach out of poverty, reach out of so many generations of discrimination, of subjugation, of institutionalized racism. That it's crazy for me because, not to make this too political, but both of the people running for president that are likely to be the nominees of their party were born before the end of Jim Crow. They were born before the end of redlining. They were born before the Civil Rights Act, born before the Voting Rights Act. I mean, all of these things, and in fact, in many cases, they were adults and or participating in these debates. For so much of America to expect that all the sins of our past have been pushed aside, have been relegated to history, have been atoned for, is so incredibly wrong on so many and selfish. And so, as I thought about these folks losing their lives, obviously it's a tragedy here, but it's every day for so many people that are still at risk or impacted by violence in their own neighborhoods, at home. And I think too many of us take it for granted, and too many of us separate this kind of violence from that kind of violence, and we realize it's happening every day. We need to do better to address it. And I think that being bold, I think that's what you were talking about to ask me about, being bold, especially when I was younger, was mistaken for being arrogant or being a know-it-all. And I think if I'm honest with myself, sometimes I do think that I, in retrospect, was arrogant or did think I was a know-it-all. But I'd like to hope, even if it's not always totally accurate, that it was out of a desire to do good, to fix something, to help someone, even if it's myself. And I also think it's being bold is also a defense mechanism. And so fearful of what's to come or what may happen or what has happened and what could happen again. And it's a complex trait. And I think that you cannot be bold without experiencing and knowing what fear means. And it is just like, I don't think that you can be hopeful and be nurturing to that young man that lost his father without understanding what loss is like.
I mean, I think it's really powerful. Thank you for saying that. Thank you for naming what we're about to experience in this next 5, 6, 7 months. I don't even want to count, but it's about to be a new weightiness of heaviness of what's happening in our world. Definitely here in the United States politically, but also just in the world. I think there's a lot happening. The AI,
yeah.
Some people are excited, some people are freaked out. The elections, some people are excited, some people are freaked out. Like in everything, there's all these groups that have different levels of feelings that they can show or not show. And I'm really hesitant to talk about politics in a lot of ways. But as I heard you speak, something shifted in my mind in this context, and something said to me. I mean, this is February, right? It's Black History Month. Like if I'm ever gonna speak about the injustice I have seen. Now, I've not just seen it only in February. I've seen it in my life. But if I'm ever going to speak about something, wouldn't this be a beautiful time to speak about it? You know? There was a company recently who that is a funny, kind of funny story, but it's not funny, but it's also happened the day after I found out about my cousin, right? So they want to have a meeting with me. They want to bring me in to do a talk for Juneteenth, which is in June. It's been a year in planning. Long story short, they were trying to negotiate my speaking rates, which okay, no problem. We can talk. I want to talk about it. I'm down to negotiate. But I was also thinking how the irony that in February, and not that it had anything to do with the timing of the call, but in February, this organization who had already given a discount, they're a multi-million-dollar organization. My little nonprofit is not. That they had just not even the sight that what they were asking me to do in Black History Month for a talk in June about Juneteenth. They were asking me, a small little nonprofit, to can you make your rates lower? Because our company doesn't really want to put a lot of money towards anything diversity wise. So can you, nonprofit, small guy, Oakland, California, can you just give us a lower rate? And I don't think they intended it to be personal or disrespectful. It wasn't about intent. It was more of how I felt it. I mean, to be honest. And I said, you know what? I'm having a hard time with this conversation. Just I think I'm trying to do it. I'm trying to be professional. I said, and I'm smiling. I'm saying it like this because I'm smiling because I know I'm on this video. We're on a video. But then all of a sudden I said, but I think I need to take the mask off a little bit, And I was like, be careful, Ashanti. Don't take off all of them. Just take off 2 layers. How about just 2? How about And I think somehow I was like in one of the wrestling matches, I just snatched the whole thing off. And oh my goodness, I, I forgot I was on camera and I talked with my hands. And it was this moment of like, I felt totally justified. I was not mean. I was not disrespectful. I was speaking from the heart. But I oftentimes realize I don't talk like that because I'm oftentimes looking out for other people's feelings so much that I don't even speak what I really want to say. And I think in that moment after I finished, then all the fear, guilt, shame, worry, but I was just ultimately in my mind, I said, Ashanti, I felt so free. I felt on one side free, and then the other side, Ashanti, even $3,000 is good for your nonprofit. Even if like me, just like being like, well, it was a dance. I was actually, I'm still processing what happened on that call because I think I've tried to like forget about it. But that moment of like, where do you get to place to be bold and speak from a place of respect and honor and care, but not let people walk over you? And I think
I don't know. I haven't mastered that yet either. That's a very hard. It's a hard balance.
it is a hard balance sometimes. I wish it wasn't as hard, but I think in the world we live in, we have a world that tries to conform us to what they want.
I I had to look up his name, make sure it wasn't wrong. But there was about the Tuskegee Airmen, I'm guessing. Black History Month. The Tuskegee Airmen always seem to come up in Black History Month.
Yeah.
The commander of the Tuskegee Airmen was General Benjamin Oliver Davis Jr. And a lot of people knew about him, and he was able to conform enough to also change the narrative of what people of color, specifically Black people, but for and this honest truth, people like him changed the narrative on which all people of color and minorities in America could exist and do. Not to glorify the military. I have to be sensitive that I don't do that, but to be able to be at the height of his career, commanding one of the most consequential forces in American history, one of the most revered, at least in modern history, I think was fundamentally able to change the course of how we treat Black people in the military. But what I didn't know in this Black History Month was that his father, I had no clue about this, but his father, same namesake, Benjamin O. Davis Sr., was actually the very first Black general in American history and served all the way from the DC National Guard back in the late 1800s all the way until World War II, like the Spanish-American War era, all into World War II. And both of them charted this path where conforming in a way that was also bold enough to make a difference and change history was something that they were able to balance. And I would also say that being bold enough to talk to someone authentically with the full force of your sincerity and being uncertain about that is actually a good thing, because it means we never take our own feelings into account so much that we forget everyone else's. And I think that I totally understand why you would feel like that when compared to like the revenues of this big organization. And I think it's their lack of empathy, maybe not intentionally, to even dare to ask that question. I think that's something that we can all learn from, because I think it's that uncertainty that keeps us honest with ourselves, but also honest with others in a way that is, I hate to say diplomatic, but that is useful and that is mutual. I just think it's an interesting concept. I think it's natural and necessary that we're always fighting with our fear of being too bold or not bold enough. I think it's a good thing. I think so anyway.
Yeah, I love the way you said it in that way. I mean, what I heard you say was to be bold enough to speak your feelings, how you feel, but not so much so that you don't think about the feelings of others. And I think that having that balance, being on the other side of, I'm going to be quiet because I don't want to make anybody feel any odd kind of way, as opposed to, I'm going to take that one little step in and I'm going to say it while I'm also being mindful. Instead of being so mindful about how they're going to feel about what I want to say, I'm going to just step in and say it, but also being mindful that of their feeling. I think that is, I think it almost seems like two different things, but it's almost like, oh, I often stay on this side of the line. I think Parker Palmer, who is he's a writer. I know him as a writer, but he has a couple of the titles out there. He, in one of his books, he talks about this idea of I call it the critical gap, but he may maybe call it the tragic gap, but there's a gap between where we are now and where we want to be. And I think what he asks us to do is he asks us to stand in the gap. Like, don't get stuck where you are, and I think that's this opportunity to stand in the gap. I think in that call, I was standing in the gap. Like, I'm not all the way there where I'm bold to say everything I really want to say even also still being mindful of other people. But I was like, I need to speak this, because if I hang up this call and don't say it, I'm going to be saying it. I'm going to be saying it already, but I'm going to be saying it to myself out loud in my mind. You didn't speak up for yourself, Ashanti. You didn't hold true to your own values of what you didn't honor. You didn't honor yourself the way you always honor others. And I think I've been like in that moment of like, okay, the gap, me getting to where I really want to be, which is like as a sovereign being and being able to, that I feel like it's not wrong for me to speak up about what I feel and what I need. And I think that is a new journey. And I think that's the constant work they get to do. So thank you.
But it's how people change the world, I think.
Yeah.
By minding that gap in a way that brings people in and also changes their hearts.
There is. Because they can't hear you, you're not making any change. You get shut down. You shut them down because of that. And I think I see that a lot in our community, sadly. You know, when we met first face to face in DC, I told you I can't wait to connect again. And I'm gonna say it here. I think we've just maybe scratched the surface. I'm thanking you for your committing your time to being here with us. Is there anything you feel like you want to say right now? And I'm hoping that this is not the last time you're here. I'm hoping that you come back. I'm hoping that you come back on the show again. The vision of this show is to make a conversations that is like, what would it be like if men could come together and really be more authentic with each other? I think so many men don't have that. And studies show that men are feeling lonelier than ever. Not just men, young people, teens, people around the world, but definitely in this epidemic of what we're talking about in this show is making space for men just to, man, I feel like I know you a lot more. I would even want to know, continue knowing you. What's calling you as we get ready to close out this show?
Well, number one, I think it was I didn't know what to expect. I've watched a couple episodes out here as the Wi-Fi allows, and I was really worried about being able to say something useful that would help someone. And being out in this desert, I sometimes question why we're here. But I remember that we have changed and saved at least one or two lives, and if that's one or two lives, that's all that matters. It's the reason why we're here. It doesn't have to be 100. It doesn't have to be 1,000. If just one is enough. And I hope that if just one person watches this or listens to this and feels like they can be more authentic to themselves and be more sincere to themselves, and also maybe, who knows, process loss, process mourning, bereavement in a way that brings them peace. I think that the job was done. But I would say that I think loneliness is one of the most dangerous, most insidious, most cruel and unfair experiences anyone can live through. And I think sometimes people don't live through it, and that's why depression, anxiety, trouble sleeping, suicide, self-harm are so common. And we met because of the Surgeon General, and I would say that some of the work that he does on loneliness, it truly is an epidemic of global proportions, not unique to America, not unique to the West or the East. And I think that finding ways to be together, even when you're apart, are necessary components of humanity. And he once, in his book, he had said once that there's a difference between solitude and loneliness, and that fine line is sometimes hard to discern. Minding the gap there is like minding the gap, I think, between boldness and fear, and being able to talk about it, being able to be honest about it, I think is one of the first things we should do. But finding community in that loneliness is also something we should do, and keep the conversation going.
Let's do it. Let's keep the conversation going, brother. I am so thankful that we got to make this happen. I appreciate you. I'm cheering you on.
Likewise.
And I look forward to seeing you when you're back face to face again.
Absolutely. And next time I'll follow instructions and actually draw a mask.
Well, maybe now you have an inspiration for your journaling practice sometime this week. I'm gonna draw a mask and you can just send me the picture of the mask. That'd be great. No pressure, no expectation, but just now your creative juices get to have their own free space.
Absolutely. I have an idea already.
All right. Well, look, folks, Kevin and I shared our masks here publicly. You don't have to share your mask publicly. You can go to millionmask.org and make your mask. And we look forward to you being a part of the journey with us. Kevin Cho, thank you for being on the show with me today. So good to know you more, brother. And I look forward to seeing you soon.
Likewise. You too. Take care.
Bye, folks. The Taking Off the Mask podcast is produced by Ryan Louie and graphics by Kelly Wong. Guests are managed by Dan Paloma, and the podcast is edited by Samuel Matingo. We'd like to thank everyone who's been a part of the creation of this podcast, and for every guest that has been a part of the show, you are now a part of the Taking Off the Mask family. The Taking Off the Mask podcast is brought to you by the Ever Forward Club, and if you like what you've heard today, please subscribe, write a 5-star review, and share this with someone. We look forward to having more conversations that matter. And please remember, there is more to you than anybody can see by just looking at you.